going to show you a different way to use animation layers. So before, we had used the addition of the animation layer for us to have this bouncing ball here move down the stairs. And now what I'm going to show you is a way to basically combine two different cycles and blend between them very seamlessly. And we have used this many times in feature films and high-end television shows to perhaps move between different types of walk cycles or like flying cycles to easily and quickly introduce some variation while still maintaining consistency across a team of artists. We'll move over to the animation layers section. So of course here we've got our base animation, and this is where we've got our cycle moving. And now we're going to create another layer with this object selected. I'm going to call it Wiggle. I'll show you why in a second. So one thing we're going to change about this that we didn't do in the last one, which I didn't even introduce to you because it by default is considered an additive. So what additive does is it keeps the underlying animation and adds additional animation over top of it. What we're going to do in this example is choose the override layer. So you just right click on the layer under layer mode and go to override. So you can see right now that my ball now just went to 0, 0, 0, and if I scrub through, it's not moving at all. That's because I have this layer overriding this base animation layer, and its weight is set to 1. So if I put that weight back to 0, I'm still going to see this, and the more that I introduce the wiggle, which is at this moment having 0 animation, it's going to be sort of combining the two of them together and finding a middle ground. So what I like to do with this is just put it to 0 again. It's important when you're creating a cycle that you're going to be blending between, that you have some thought put into when you're going to be making these changes. So what I'm going to do is, here's my very lowest position. I'm going to set a key. Here's my high position. I'm going to set a key. Here's my low position. So again, I'm on the wiggle layer with the weight to 0, so it's not affecting anything. I'm just setting keys here basically at the extreme values from the underlying animation. Right, so now I'm going to turn on my wiggle layer, and I'm just going to make changes to this animation. So what I want is, I'm just going to have it kind of wiggle up and down in space instead of doing the bounce that we had before. And I'm going to cycle pre and post infinity. So now you can see if I show you the two, we've got our base animation, which is this really sharp bounce carrying on, and our wiggle set up on the same keyframes. Here, I can show you both of them together actually. So we've got our same keyframes at the top and bottom of our arcs here, just to make it easy to blend between. For instance, if I had set this up completely the opposite, it would be a little bit messy while we're blending between the two. Alright, so I'll go into the wiggle, and this one has a value of 1, so if I play it, again, because it's on override, all we'll see is the wiggle animation. And if I were to turn it off, all we'll see is the bounce animation. So what I'm going to do is have a certain number of bounces, and then I'm going to set a key. Press this K button here, and that will give us a weight attribute here to see in the graph editor. So now I'm going to key it on, so you can see here when you're keying the weight on and off. So what this will give us is the base animation all the way along here, and then it will turn into the wiggle animation. So I'll just play that for you. And if it feels like it's changing too abruptly, you can always change the timing. So we've got a few bounces here. And it's slowly going to transition into that wiggle. And then say I want to start transitioning out, I'll set a key there. And then maybe here, it will be fully off again. Alright, so now it's going to go into the wiggle and then back to the bounce. So you can play with that as much as you want. You can change this second animation. You can make it potentially, be higher, lower. You can add, maybe we want to add in some left and right going on here. Oops. And then we can get post infinity going on there, and maybe offset this a little bit so it's not moving at the same on the same keys as the Y. So now we'll get something a little wackier when we move into our wiggle. Alright, so yeah, basically this can be very, very handy, as I said before. Like, we had potentially like a flying cycle, and then it moves into a bit of a gliding cycle, and you can key these on and off, so the animator doesn't have to start from scratch and hand key all of these transitions. They can quickly work this stuff out, and then if you can make changes as much as you like. You can adjust the weight, you can adjust when you key it on and off, and you can adjust either of the underlying cycles. You can see how very, very simple these underlying cycles are and how quick and easy it is to change them at any point. And then if you're happy with them and you want to take basically your blocking or your sort of first pass and refine it, well, it's all together into one animation so you can see what your curves look like, you can always shift select both of them here, and then we can just merge layers. And that's going to give us everything baked down. So it's now all on one layer, and we can make whatever changes we want. And then if we see anything kind of a little bit funky that we don't like for instance, this here feels like a really sharp increase in curve there. So if I want to clean any of that up, now I can very clearly see it without having to kind of guess between two different layers. Kind of a silly animation, but hopefully you get the understanding of the underlying part here. So that's a second way that we can utilize animation layers.